afternoon.
This is the third CryptoCrane cast. Title will be discovered throughout the show.
Yeah, we're a big fan of organic titling.
Yep.
Title, organic titling.
Maybe.
Nah, that was forced. That's the opposite of organic.
Yeah.
It could be confused cast.
Anyway, it's August 9th, 2018.
It is.
Thursday.
I am Jason.
I'm Craig.
I'm Ross.
And today we will be talking about all things Bitcoin-y as per every other cast. Consistency. So the first thing that we're going to start with today is mining versus investing. Is it worth mining or is it worth investing?
Yes.
Sure, dump all your money into everything until you're broke. And then Bitcoin will go to the moon and you won't be broke anymore.
Sure.
As you've alluded to before, be it traditional investing in a stock or mutual fund or investing in a cryptocurrency, it's a gamble, no?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that element still present in going all in on mining itself? Now, I know there's an initial investment involved in actually purchasing the equipment, et cetera, et cetera. What are the tangible differences between opting for mining in terms of getting into cryptocurrency versus strictly investing?
We see this argument play out over and over and over again between people, and a lot of times it's people who just say, "Don't mine, just buy the cryptocurrency," or "Don't buy the cryptocurrency, mine." And it's a debate, and it can't be answered for everybody with one answer. So it really comes down to a few things. One, do you believe that you can mine more coins than you could have purchased using the same amount of money over a period of time?
Okay.
So if the answer is no, then you should just buy the coins. If the answer is yes, then it's still not necessarily you should mine. If the answer is yes, then you have to look at what are the chances of hardware failure over the time that I'm going to be doing this. What's the time investment that I'm going to put into this, effort wise. It's a lot of other factors. Sometimes mining makes a lot more sense, especially for people who have cheap electricity, and especially people with long, views on how long they're going to keep the investment.
They don't think it's a flash in the pan, in other words.
Right. So there are some advantages and disadvantages to just simply purchasing the cryptocurrency. One of the advantages or disadvantages, depending on how you look at it, is that if something starts going south, you can get out of your position very quickly. You could just sell all your coins and be back to cash.
Whereas if you opted for mining, you just have a nice, pretty paperweight.
Right.
Assuming it's basic mining, if you have a GPU miner, you can still resell your GPU to nerds like myself.
Right. Yep.
So your investment is a little bit less costly in that.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whatever you stood to recoup in that scenario, though, would be like a candle next to the sun, I would think.
I don't know. Depends.
Really?
Yeah,
Fair enough.
GPUs resell, I'd say, relatively well.
Yeah, at least there is a whole other gaming market for GPUs as opposed to these ASICs. If you're not able to find another coin that uses the same algorithm that's profitable, you're kind of out of luck. What some people would argue, though, is that human nature and our fear that causes us to sell a cryptocurrency prematurely, perhaps, is kind of... when you buy a miner, you can't just sell the cryptocurrency, until you have it, and you're still mining it. So therefore, you're forced to hold onto your position for a much longer period of time. And even though you might have desired to sell, and you couldn't, it's possible that it could actually benefit you because over the long term, as the cryptocurrency appreciates and goes up higher in value, you might end up benefiting. It might have been opposite to what your human behavior wanted to do, but you ended up being forced to hold longer and end up making a higher profit that way too. Of course, someone who just has discipline to buy and hold the regular cryptocurrency could achieve the same result. The real question is, can you mine more coins than you could have purchased using the same amount of money? And if yes, then mining might be the best option. So calculating that is really tough, though.
Well, I was going to say, earlier you alluded to electricity costs and obvious potential maintenance fees, for lack of a better term.
And you
Are
got
there
the-
other costs associated with it?
I mean, you've got
Or I shouldn't say associated with it. That should be factored into the decision-making process.
maybe not cost, but you need to factor in the fact that the difficulty of mining increases as more people mine.
That's fair.
So your slice of the pie is forever shrinking as more people jump into the mining scene. Not only that, but most cryptocurrencies have a decreasing reward over time. So, for example, Bitcoin for the first 4 years, the block reward was 50 Bitcoins per block. Then it halved at 4 years to roughly 25, and then it's been halved again, and we're at 12.5 now. And sometime around 2019, we're going to see it go down to 6.125 Bitcoins per block. Each of those times that that's halved, we've seen a price increase on the value of them. So some miners think that will happen, but at the same time, why not just buy the coin and hold it? So it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. If you have cheap electricity, though, mining is rarely a bad choice. So
Definitely.
If.
yeah.
This podcast is brought to you by Whiskey Sours. Let's keep rolling. So an interesting thing brought up when we were at a local drinking establishment that may appear in a future video.
Foreshadowing.
Ooh, love it. Was why I'm paraphrasing, but was more or less the ideology that Bitcoin is kind of like being held up as the gold standard to every other coin. So if I have 5 Litecoins that I want to switch to equivalent amount of Ethereum, I have to take my Litecoin, transfer it to Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin over to Ethereum.
Through an exchange. Yeah.
Through an exchange.
Yeah.
I think there's only 1 or 2 that'll let you go directly through some coins without Bitcoin.
Right.
But I think it's only
Direct trading pairs. Yeah.
right. I think it's only 1 or 2 exchanges, and that's only like 3 or 4 different coins. Pretty much everything. There's exceptions, but generally the rule is, in order to swap out from one coin to a different coin, you have to go through Bitcoin, kind of making it almost like a gold standard.
Mm-hmm. It's a reserve currency almost.
Yeah, it's kind of feels like the antithesis of what Bitcoin would want.
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, the phrase itself, gold standard, kind of harkens back to pre-fiat dollar value, right? Where
Right.
you literally had the U.S. dollar attributed to however much gold there was in Fort Knox or buried under some Kansas farmer's backyard or something.
I think the fact that Bitcoin is the oldest and most established and has, was the first one to enter the scene, it is the most familiar. And having all of these thousands of cryptocurrencies come into existence in relatively recently, a lot of them, lack a lot of trust, and they haven't been as proven as Bitcoin is. We're over 10 years now of, almost 10 years of active Bitcoin transactions. That's something that gives some people some confidence to hold it as opposed to other cryptocurrencies and exchanges. They've been hesitant to do U.S. dollar pairing with other cryptocurrencies. So usually you go to an exchange and you can only buy Bitcoin with your U.S. dollars. Not always, but that's usually how it is. And then with Bitcoin, you can exchange that for every other cryptocurrency. From an exchange's point of view, that's great because they're making a slight fee on every time you do a transaction. So if they force you to do 2 transactions to get the coin you want, they're double dipping. So there's some incentive there for the exchanges to keep doing what they're doing. There are some exchanges that are starting to branch out and do other, U.S. dollar trading pairs, and I think those are the exchanges that are looking to grow their base. They're trying to steal people from other exchanges, and that's a good way to do it.
Most of them are traditional sort of investment companies looking to branch out a little bit.
I don't know the history on a lot of the exchanges, but a lot of them do have some financial ties to some larger institutions. But a lot of them are just, they're startups that do nothing but crypto exchange. So there's some that don't even do U.S. dollar trading. They only do like Tether, which is...
That's what I was trying to think of. Tether, which is a...
Right. It's
weird...
tethered to the U.S. dollar. It's... kind of a weird. I don't want to call it currency. It's a token that some exchanges have agreed is equal to $1, and you can sell your cryptocurrency for Tether and then move that Tether sometimes from one exchange to another, but often just within the same exchange, and it's kind of equivalent to US dollars, and it's not yet publicly audited, so there's a lot of fear that maybe it's just all make believe, but
it's the money's there. It's fine.
Sure, yeah, we're good for it.
Right.
Be cool, man.
It's fine.
So, using Tether is an interesting idea. There's another one I believe that's coming that's trying to peg itself to the US dollar as well. That is making it easier for these exchanges to have a dollar reserve currency that's not Bitcoin. The advantage to the exchange is that they have this pseudo dollar asset that probably isn't regulated, and therefore they don't have to go through the same hurdles of regulation that they have to for actually holding US dollars. So perhaps they can avoid, I don't know, like requiring a money transmit license or something crazy. Probably not, but there's a lot of clever people out there that are trying to make it easier.
Clever is the word?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you had to go use whatever Tether stuff that they have, it's still another transaction fee.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it behooves the
Right.
man to get that money.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because when Bitcoin sneezes, the rest of cryptocurrency gets a cold. So it's
Good analogy.
yeah, it's kind of frustrating actually, because a lot of people feel that some of these other cryptocurrencies have nothing to do with Bitcoin, and yet when Bitcoin goes down, their cryptocurrency goes down, and when Bitcoin goes up, their cryptocurrency goes up, and they would love to see that be disconnected. Imagine if actually this does kind of happen. Like if Apple had a bad quarter and every other tech company suffered because of it,
Sure.
in the stock market, and actually that does kind of happen sometimes.
Win or lose by association.
Yeah, right. But there should be some ability to succeed on their own merits is the idea. So, and I can.
But that's not for lacking a mechanism. That's just public perception, no?
Yeah. I mean, it also goes to point out that most of the people who own these things are in it for the speculative nature. They're here as investors or gamblers or whatever you want to call them, but people who are just hoping the value goes up. And so, a lot of the people who own Bitcoin have no idea or any interest in how it works and how it changes. And honestly, that's how most people treat normal money. They don't care how it works. It does,
fair.
So I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that that's a change from years and years ago, where people who owned it and were interested in it actually cared about where it was going as a platform. So we'll see.
Yes, we will. One way or the other. Speaking of Wayback Machines, last week we kicked off our new series, What the F is a Bitcoin, talking about the concept of currency as it relates to, US dollars at the very least, because, with the exception of you and your insistence on rubles for everything, which is entertaining at restaurants, if nothing else. Most of us are used to American dollars. That is fundamental to understanding the concept of Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency, really. Which brings us to Chapter 1, since Chapter 0 was kind of the prologue. No, seriously, what is a Bitcoin?
Yeah, so the definition, according to the internet, of a Bitcoin is a type of digital currency in which encryption techniques are used to regulate the generation of units of currency and verify the transfer of funds operating independently of a central bank.
Everyone got that? Good.
Nailed it. Next. So in layman's terms, it's pretty much magic internet money that isn't controlled by the man.
I like that one much better.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I came up with that one.
Yeah.
You said that, my sideburns grew like half an inch longer.
So a Bitcoin is a digital currency that, I'll just repeat the whole thing over again, just saying it differently.
A digital currency that's not a tied down, adhered to, incumbent upon any sort of centralized organization from which it derives value.
Yeah, and
Which doesn't clear things up much, but I feel better having said something.
well, yeah, no, I that actually it brings up a good question, which is why didn't digital currencies exist before Bitcoin? And there are a couple that did exist, but why weren't they successful? And it really comes into the question of why, if I have a digital item and I give that digital item to you, how do you know that I didn't, keep that digital item, also copy it and give it to Jason here, Kilgore? And Bitcoin solves that problem. It's the double spend problem by using blockchain. So it creates a ledger that is decentralized that knows when I transfer Bitcoin from me to you, my ledger goes down by 1 and your ledger goes up by 1, and that's verified. And
throughout the entirety.
Exactly, yeah. By the miners, who are doing proof of work that solve the other problem that Bitcoin solved, which is the Byzantine generals problem. How do you have a bunch of separate agents all decide to agree to come to consensus on who's right when we're doing a transaction, that it is actually a good transaction and not someone trying to hack it. So with blockchain, which Bitcoin is built on, you solve both of those problems, and now we have the ability to have a digital token that can be transferred between people with security, with the ability to view the transaction and transparency, and just all the things that you need in order for a currency to work are there now. So that's really what was exciting about Bitcoin, and still is, and why so many people, once they learn about it, are going, oh my goodness, yeah, that's actually a really powerful technology. That's why so many other companies now are looking at blockchain technologies going, wow, this does solve a lot of problems. And Bitcoin is just one of the use cases for blockchain. So yeah, I mean, currency works really well, fits the puzzle that blockchain solved. So yeah, that's what a Bitcoin is. A lot of people also think that a Bitcoin is like a digital file or something. It really isn't. Bitcoins never actually move. They're in the blockchain. Imagine, which is a decentralized, ledger.
It's in the cloud.
It's on all of the full nodes that are, out there that are running the Bitcoin software. But imagine it like a safety deposit box. When I give you, if I have a Bitcoin in a safety deposit box, when I give you that Bitcoin, I don't actually remove it from the safety deposit box. I just give you my keys. Mm-hmm. And that's how Bitcoin works. The Bitcoins are always in the blockchain. But when I send you a Bitcoin, what I'm really doing is sending you a key that gives you...
Transferring ownership.
I'm transferring ownership, exactly, without the thing moving. So really, all you have is a small digital signature that gives you access to the Bitcoins that I once had. And I no longer have that digital signature. So it's kind of a really cool concept.
Digital signature that's validated by every single other entity that's involved in it.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
So how are they created? How do Bitcoins come from?
Well, that's...
Bitcoin fairies.
Yeah, Bitcoin fairies. Yeah, under your pillow. Yeah. Bitcoin is generated as a reward for encrypting the most recent block of transactions on the blockchain. And Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, had to come up with an incentive to have people dedicate computer processing power to the task of securing the transactions that are happening on Bitcoin's network. Otherwise, why on earth would anyone waste their electricity and their computer processor cycles doing this? So Satoshi said, hey, why don't the people who are securing the network, why don't they earn the new Bitcoins that are newly minted? And the protocol itself will distribute those Bitcoins directly to the people who solve the blocks. So that's where new Bitcoins come from, is when a mining device somewhere solves the puzzle that is needed to encrypt the most recent block of transactions. they win, and they get all at the moment 12.5 bitcoins plus transaction fees that are tied up in that last block. Since doing that requires a lot of processing power, and it's pretty much like playing the lottery, most people join pools that all contribute a lot of work towards solving the most recent block. And then when that block is solved by the pool then distributes the rewards to the people who are members of the pool, depending on how much processing power they contributed. So that's kind of what most people do when they mine. They point their miner at a pool, and then they get paid out on a regular schedule, usually, at least once a day, because the pool is large enough to be solving at least one block a day, usually many more. Considering that there's a block every 10 minutes roughly, usually a little quicker because, Bitcoin mining speed is still increasing. So,
Bitmain.
That's where Bitcoins come from. They're just built into the protocol essentially and rewarded to whoever solves the last block on the blockchain.
So, to make it slightly easier to understand, make sure I understand this, you hand your safety deposit keys to Craig, and that's a transaction that happened on the blockchain. I am running a computer that is actively trying to verify and encrypt transactions. So my computer verifies that you handed those keys over to Craig, and then I go, that happened, I'm going to secure it so it can't be modified, changed, or anything ever, and then I get a safety deposit box with a Bitcoin in it.
Brand new Bitcoins.
With a brand new Bitcoin. Mine's shinier than the Bitcoin that you got. Your Bitcoin's junk.
But they're fungible.
It's probably even
so
a
they're all
Litecoin.
equal.
It's probably a Litecoin. Got garbage in there.
Dogecoin.
Hey, one Dogecoin is still worth one Dogecoin. So
The most reliable of coins.
yes.
Much wow. So that would be a pretty decent way of explaining what happened. Is
Yeah.
you hand him the keys. I went, yeah, that happened, and you guys could also be mining, saying like, that we
Yep.
did that, and then we encrypt it, make sure that we can change it. I get new Bitcoin, but with time elapsing so long, the amount of computer power it takes, the likelihood of me saying that transaction happened is small because I'm competing with everybody else.
Right.
So it would make more sense of us three going like, hey, how about we all do this together and then we can split the Bitcoin because it'll increase our probability of actually solving.
Yep. And therefore, we have a pool.
Great.
Yep.
I know this is several years down the road. Does that, for lack of a better term, relationship change when the cap has been reached?
Absolutely. Great question. So, as most people know, there's only 21 million Bitcoins that will ever exist.
Right.
More than 16 million of those Bitcoins have already been mined. However, it's estimated that based on the way that mining works, as more processing power gets added, the algorithm automatically adjusts to increase the difficulty to reset the block time to roughly 10 minutes. That it'll take almost another 100 years before we're able to mine the last Bitcoins. Part of that is because the reward gets halved every 4 years. But what will happen long before that, if Bitcoin's still a thing, is that the transaction fees that are earned also by the miners will actually surpass the block reward. So what a lot of people don't realize is that when you send Bitcoin, you have to attach a transaction fee if you want it to get prioritization on the network. We're at the point now where Bitcoin's blocks are full. The 1 megabyte size blocks, well, they're a little larger depending on how you do it, but the blocks are full of transactions more often than not. So they can only store so many transactions inside the block, and so what happens is the miners will prioritize the transactions that have larger fees, which are set by the person sending the transaction. So when I send a Bitcoin to you, if I wanted to cut in line, so to speak, I might attach a larger fee to it. And that fee goes all to the miner. So those fees would, in theory, pay the miners to keep doing their job way longer than Bitcoin, way after Bitcoin has been totally mined. So there will always be a revenue for miners as long as it keeps operating under the current system. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people have been suggesting, hey, these fees have gotten out of control. Bitcoin used to be something that you could transact, for less than a penny. And now it's something that we saw in last year, 2017. We saw transactions go as high as $30, $40 a transaction. It was ridiculous, which is why, a lot of people didn't like the direction that Bitcoin was going and forked off to Bitcoin Cash, which allowed for larger block sizes.
But that's a conversation for a different podcast.
Yes. Yeah, that's
maybe the next podcast.
maybe.
BTC versus BCH. Which B's the biggest? So, carrying on, why does the price of Bitcoin fluctuate so much? Why is it worth so much and other times so little? And what gives it value at all? And I guess that question should probably first be pre-answered with what gives anything value.
Right.
For instance, let's say you play WoW and you
World
have
of Warcraft. That's for me mostly.
That's good. You get used to, especially years ago, of people farming a significant amount of gold and selling it for real money. Well, now all of a sudden, all that gold that you have in WoW actually has a tangible insert currency, USD, Bitcoin, yen, whatever.
There's demand for it.
Right. There's a demand where I don't want to spend my time, so the time that I already got paid for, I'm going to use that instead to get this other currency that I want. So with that analogy in mind, if you buy gold from eBay or whatever for WoW, the money that you just paid for that gold now has a direct not what's the word I'm looking for.
It impacts the price globally,
Right.
because you have, someone has said that I think it's worth this, and you've agreed on that price.
Yep.
And so you've transferred your money, and that affects every other transaction because that person now goes, hey, that worked, and someone else saw that worked, and they agree that, hey, that price is about what you paid.
Yep.
And it's
A
supply
gold,
and demand.
a fake currency in a game has an actual USD conversion rate.
Right. Now, the difference between Bitcoin and World of Warcraft gold is that World of Warcraft gold is essentially managing to be printed into oblivion at a moment's notice. Obviously, they haven't done that, but it's the thing that prevents people from probably putting too much money into that. Bitcoin, on the other hand, can't be printed into oblivion, or other cryptocurrencies most likely cannot be printed into oblivion because of the way that they're designed. But with the supply and demand still affects the price, just like everything else. Mm-hmm. So there are enough people out there that want this, either for a speculative nature, because they actually want to use it, and they are out there with demand, and there's people out there that have them who don't want to sell them for any cheaper than what they think they're worth. And so you have that happening all over the world 24/7. It never shuts down because there is no central authority that can say, all right, trading stops at 4 p.m.
Yep.
Yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it'd be kind of tough. I mean, it'd kind of be saying, like, you can't transact your, in U.S. dollars after 4 p.m. Like, it'd be difficult for anyone to just say you can't move these from one person to another at this time. If all the exchanges came together and agreed that, hey, everyone needs a break between these hours, they could do that, but I'm sure there'd be another exchange 10 minutes later that says, well, we don't do that. Yeah. Come to us.
The after hours exchange.
Right, the after hours exchange, yeah. So, a lot of people ask, what is the intrinsic value of a Bitcoin? And I think that's an interesting question because usually they're trying to say, well, it's nothing and it means nothing. It's just supply and demand. It's tulip mania, if you will. Where people are just want them because of fear of missing out, and want them because there's a perception that they have value, but there is nothing behind them. And you could reverse the question and say, well, what gives intrinsic value to your U.S. dollar? And people come up with weird things like, oh, U.S. government and, our military and other random things that are really, really loosely associated, but
the Illuminati and lizard people.
Obviously, yeah. But really it comes down to faith. But with Bitcoin, there's another factor that a lot of people don't talk about a lot, and that is intrinsically the payment system is built into Bitcoin, which is unlike currencies that we're used to, like the US dollar. With the US dollar, for me to move it from me to you, I might have to go through a payment processor such as PayPal or something. And obviously, we think PayPal is worth billions and billions of dollars. They're, a huge entity that people have no issue thinking, wow, that has a lot of value. Well, Bitcoin has PayPal and a bunch of other stuff built into it, essentially. So a lot of people would say that the payment system itself gives it the intrinsic value because of the utility now of being able to transact without a intermediary. So I think that there is an argument that Bitcoin has intrinsic value. I don't think you can easily peg it to anything, but I think that the fact that it does have intrinsic value means that that value is, as subjective as it is, does exist. So
I agree.
I dig it. All right. I believe that does it for that segment. On to the news. So, Commonwealth Bank completes new blockchain-enabled global trade experiment. So, Commonwealth Bank, in addition to, I think, a few Australian banks, decided to use the blockchain in its entirety to transact 17 tons of almonds. Every part of the transaction, the movement, everything occurred on the blockchain.
That's a lot of nuts.
That is a significant amount of nuts on the blockchain.
It's the only joke I'll make for the story.
Can't wait till we get to the tea bags.
This is just another case of companies realizing that blockchain is a really powerful utility for the device, if you will, for being transparent with information.
Yep.
So, in this article, they explained that they had, IoT devices in the containers measuring temperature and updating the blockchain and actually storing their documents, their their certifications and stuff as it went through different ports in the blockchain itself. This is a custom-built blockchain for this application, so they could design it that way. But it's really kind of cool. I would love to see something like this with real estate. Wink, wink. There are so many other applications that blockchain is just at the forefront of right now that are going to change the way that everybody does business 10, 20 years from now. Hopefully sooner.
Hopefully sooner. I think that does it for that story. It was kind of like a neat thing that happened. The next one is Northern Trust opens doors to cryptocurrency hedge funds as part of a pervasive blockchain expansion. Really what this comes down to, from my understanding, is Northern Trust will more or less hold on to your Bitcoin cryptocurrency assets and say that they certainly do belong to you, and kind of house them with all of your other assets that you own to give an overall idea of net worth. Did you guys take something different from that? Any other pieces? I have a quote saying that the CEO of, I believe it was CEO.
The president.
President. Oh, you're right. President of Northern Trust says that helping the company's customer account for their cryptocurrency investment is part of a larger effort to prepare for the day that fiat currencies are also issued on the blockchain. Quotes, I do believe that governments will ultimately look at digitizing their currencies and having them trade kind of like a digital coin, a digital token, a token of the US dollar, for instance, but the US dollar would still be in a vault somewhere or backed by the government.
All right, hang on. Hang on.
Yeah.
As the resident noob here,
Sure.
I have a bone to pick with that statement.
Yes.
By proxy, the entire notion of what this person's trying to do.
Yes.
Blah, 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 but the US dollar would still be in a vault somewhere or backed by the government. Leaving out the backed by the government part for just a second. Would still be in a vault somewhere. That notion that you issue paper or coin currency as it directly pertains to how much precious material, gold, platinum, unobtainium, whatever, you have locked away, is completely antithetical to the notion of cryptocurrency. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just funny that, hey, we'll back your fiat with more fiat.
Right.
Like,
Well, there's
wait
that
a minute.
Hurry, we can't make inflation go fast enough. Let's give you some inflation for your inflation.
Yeah. that does sound kind of funny to me. Yeah.
What's the play? And let me rephrase.
Northern Trust has a title, has a news headline that also has the word cryptocurrency within 4 words of it.
There. Are you in marketing too?
Getting there. I'm learning. I'm learning from the master over here.
Well, you'll have to introduce me one day. Okay, no, that makes more sense. Like, it's not predatory exactly, but if someone like me who has a fairly limited understanding of how the entire industry works can take a look at that and say, no, at one of its most, core characteristics, that's like the opposite of how this works. I guess they're just figuring there'll be a lot of people who may think, I've seen that word in the news, I'll jump on that, et cetera, et cetera. Once again, it's winning by reputation.
I think it's a combination of that, and they're trying to stage themselves to be ready for a digital currency age, where actual physical dollary dues don't matter anymore.
And then they can take some of that money and invest in their infrastructure, and soon they'll have digital vaults for their digital money.
That's right.
So it's interesting because I feel like our money has mostly been digitized already. Our US dollars, are rarely transacted in physically as opposed to through credit cards and other digital means. And they're just numbers on a ledger that are stored at a central authority that we trust, aka the bank.
Even strippers take Square these days.
Do they?
I've heard.
Where do you slide the...
Anyway, so
Get the biology textbook there.
the moving from what we currently have, a centralized digital currency, the US dollar, to a blockchain-based digital currency seems like there's a lot of benefits to the US government without any of the harms, because if it's a blockchain that they design, they can still print it into oblivion as they are now, so that wouldn't matter. They would just have more ability to track where it's going. So right now, the most anonymous form of money is cash. It's not bitcoins, it's cash. That's the thing that every drug dealer in the world wants, not the bitcoins, because you can track those pseudonymously, kind of. So imagine a government where it can actually see where all of the money is at all times. They would love that power. I'm scared of that.
I was going to say, that's a good and frighteningly Orwellian point.
Yeah, here, your taxes are automated. Everyone just got taxed. Oh, shoot. So, yeah, it's. I think that governments would be all over this and will be. It won't be Bitcoin, because Bitcoin would be an alternative that they can't control, and they wouldn't like that. But I think that they'll adopt the blockchain in the future. So, yeah.
And Northern Trust will be there.
It sure will.
To guide you along your path.
Right up in a vault.
All right, next story. Last podcast, we talked about the single SEC commissioner, Mrs. Hester Peirce, who was the dissenting voice on the SEC Council board that pretty much said the SEC is kind of being old and stinky, and all them old people got to make way for all this new young blood.
Yeah, stop stifling innovation.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of innovation. Freaking old people.
Yeah.
There's Mrs. Hester Peirce herself.
And then just, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, VanEck, SolidX's ETF, also was delayed until September. The SEC Commission decided not to rule on it yet.
Whole lots of September
Yeah.
SEC stuff coming up.
I don't know.
So there might be a small bull run up and then bear super
There'll
hard.
probably be like 8 bull runs between now and September, so yeah.
But it'll be a super duper one.
Maybe.
20,000 incoming.
I mean, if the ETF was approved and it was through a legit, fund manager, I think there's a lot of potential for some price increase, but I just feel like the stuff just is counterintuitive sometimes. Like, you can have all the good news hit all at once and the price will go down. Or you can have the worst news in the world hit and the price doesn't do anything or it goes up. And it's
We see it in the stock market all the time.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Earnings, you lost 4%.
Up 10% in
Yeah,
stock
up 10%.
price. Yeah.
Thanks, Tesla.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, I think Bitcoin's gotten to the point where it's similar. It's not about its performance necessarily. It's about the expectations in comparison to the performance. So, I'm bullish long term. It could go from where it is now to $100 a coin, and I'll still be bullish long term. But yeah, that might just make me an idiot. But
if it goes to $100, we will not see you on that podcast, as there will not be a podcast or a CryptoCrane.
I mean, it's, we've talked about this before, but Bitcoin is the first. It's huge, but it might be the Yahoo to something else's Google. And I would love to know what that new thing is.
If you had to throw a dart on the dartboard right now, what that coin would be, which one would you choose?
It's probably Ethereum.
Yep.
Yeah. Just from a development standpoint. And
Be right back. Going to buy a whole bunch of Ethereum.
Sure, yeah.
I'm going to get myself a new 1180 in mine Ethereum with it.
Yeah.
Something E3.
Something. Wait for that video coming. Dropping hot.
That's more foreshadowing.
More foreshadow. Can you tell you have English majors?
I have to contribute something.
All right, next story. McAfee Minute. Everybody loves
boy.
John McAfee.
My boy, look at that hair.
What has he done now?
Look at that hair. It's like, yeah, I could go be a roadie for Motley Crue right now. What of it?
BitFi is a wallet, hardware wallet, I believe, that phones home and says, hey, has come out and said, hey, we are unhackable. Come at me, bro.
Oh.
Try it.
Best way to get hacked.
And McAfee jumped on right behind him going, hey, yeah. Like, hey, boy, this is my boy. Yeah, you can't hack this. What up?
I mean, McAfee has been known to accept money to say outlandish things for other people.
Agreed.
Sure.
As a matter of fact, the article directly identifies him as just a promoter.
Yes.
Alongside promoter John.
He's the hype man. Yeah.
Great.
Don King.
Yes. Well, yeah, I got the hair down.
Yeah, it sure does. So after issuing that challenge of we'll give somebody that can hack us 100K, shortly after Oversoft tweeted saying, hey, short update without getting into too much detail about BitFi. We have root access, a patch firmware, and can confirm that BitFi wallet will connect happily to the dashboard. There are no checks in place to prevent that, like claimed. Oh, there are no checks in place to prevent that, claimed by BitFi. This podcast brought to you by Whiskey Sours. So they pretty much got called out in very short order saying, dude, this is hackable. We have root access, which means they can change and do whatever they want for people that aren't familiar with what root gives you. And shortly after, BitFi pretty much put out a bounty to say, like, hey, anybody that can fix this?
Kind of like crowdsourcing the solution?
Sure.
Any
news that includes John McAfee will always be brought to this cast.
Oh, yeah.
As we try to stay up to date as possible. That man is fascinating. Fascinating.
Speaking of fascinating men, I would just like to take a moment and acknowledge the gentleman standing behind John McAfee in that picture, who either has a touch indigestion or just realized what he got himself into and is rethinking several key life decisions by the look on his face.
Oh, no.
He'll get out of it.
One day.
He looks like a fighter.
Speaking of a fighter.
Speaking of fighters,
Bill
Willie.
Bill Clinton.
This segment brought to specifically for Amelia Kreisberg, who happens to be a big Bill Clinton fan, which she reminds me every time she sees and or hears him. I should learn to play the saxophone.
I have so many things to say that will not happen on a PG podcast.
Just log jammed in his brain.
So he was invited to be a keynote speaker at The Ripple conference.
Yes.
AKA Bank of America bucks.
Yeah. So Ripple's kind of like, yeah, the not well liked, ugly step cousin of the rest of the cryptocurrencies because it's not decentralized.
Mm-mm.
It's kind of like Bank of America bucks.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, imagine a bunch of banks got together and issued a joint gift card, and you could
Sponsored by the Clinton Foundation.
right. There's
There's some more jokes.
yeah.
Oh, there's lots of them.
I mean, sure, it solves some issues of moving money between banks quicker and faster and more securely, but you still have to trust the banks, and
Right.
that's one of the key facets that cryptocurrencies were trying to free us of, of needing a third party intermediary, and Ripple doesn't solve that problem. So.
So if I just a total tangent conversation here, because why not? It's fun.
Why
It's a
not?
podcast brought to you by Whiskey Sours.
Brah.
If banks typically don't make any money off of holding money for people, if that's their biggest cost expenditure, why wouldn't you willingly give that up for a cryptocurrency and just keep the part of the business that actually makes you money, which is mortgages, loans, things like that? Is it because they probably don't have the cryptocurrency capital to begin with to kind of dump most of the other headway stuff in favor of doing it using crypto?
I don't know. That's a big question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Surprise!
Yeah.
Also, where do babies come from?
Bitcoins.
Well, when a mommy and daddy love each other, they mine.
Yeah. So, I imagine that that using Ripple isn't exactly geared towards your retail customer, your individual, person who's banking there. I think it's
Sure,
probably
it's
geared towards
Bank of America trying to trade with Bank of China.
right, exactly. Like it's intermediary between banks themselves and just moving stuff and perhaps just offering a better product to customers than the ACH or SWIFT.
Sure.
That is, something faster and reliable, and you don't have to wait, because it's kind of like internet companies, who believe that the faster they can give you internet, the more stuff you're going to buy. Banks might think, hey, the faster you can do what you want with your money, the more you can use it for what you want to use it for, and that's an incentive. I agree with that viewpoint. It's kind of like Google, who was trying to give the fast internet to all those different cities that kind of didn't go anywhere, but they
Fiber.
yeah, fiber.
They're
yeah.
dropping fiber in favor of global Wi-Fi.
Sure. But their ideal is, hey, the faster we can get people browsing the web, the more ads they can see from us, and it's like, it's not wrong, So maybe banks are looking at it from that perspective. The faster they can do what they want with their money, the more services we can provide them, and the more they'll use our services. I don't know.
Okay, I dig it.
fair.
If
It's all
cryptocurrencies,
speculative,
yeah,
so.
if cryptocurrencies didn't exist and there was just the invention of Ripple, I'd be excited for it because it's an improvement over the current status quo. No one's arguing that Ripple is worse than the status quo. And so it is a move in the right direction. It's just compared to real cryptocurrencies, I don't like it. So,
All right. Hear that, Slick Willie?
Right.
All right. Silicon launches record-breaking ASICs powered by Samsung Tech, leaving Bitmain in the dust. They released their Terminator2 miner.
Hey, what?
Yeah.
Terminator 2.
Yeah. It's called Terminator 2.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they're doing it. They know.
Okay. Continue.
That is able to do 17.2 terahash at about 1430 watts, which is the highest terahash to wattage that's, I believe, currently out. It's roughly 73 watts per terahertz.
Right, but they also have the updated T2 Turbo miner,
Yeah.
which is at 24 terahashes per second.
That's what you want, is it?
And
Turbo
can go
Terminator.
as low as 75 watts per terahash. So for reference, The industry standard, Bitmain Antminer S9i does 94 watts per terahash. So this is a pretty substantial decrease in power per terahash, which is typically your greatest cost when mining electricity.
Do you think isn't this the first miner that uses the Samsung chips?
I'm not sure. I thought their T1 and T2 non-turbo might have also used them. I'm not sure. But they're selling them for $13.50 before shipping and all the other fees that come along with that.
Sure.
So it's usually quite a bit more when you actually get to the checkout. But it's interesting. It's as a price per terahash, it's not bad. It's not as good as an S9 is, but it's more efficient than an S9, so maybe longer lasting. I'd like to see what kind of reliability these devices have. There haven't been a ton of them in the wild yet, so I'd like to see how they're running 3 months from now. Maybe we'll get one. We'll test it out.
Maybe we'll get one.
Yeah.
Content, baby.
Speaking of getting one, the last part of that headline. Last part of that headline alluded to something about Canaan one-upping, and apparently roughly the same time this announcement was coming out, this company, Canaan, announced that they had a 30 terahash miner doing about 53 watts a terahash, consuming 53 watts a terahash, apparently.
Yeah, that would be pretty impressive.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how. It's funny they say a 30 terahertz ASIC, but they mean terahash. So.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Slight malapropism. My brain just corrected it. Good thing it was actually correct.
Anyway, like everything, you could have the most efficient miner, but let's see where Canaan prices it. Because if they price it out of the park where it can't, where it just doesn't make sense, you'd have to run it for a decade, and by the time you reach ROI, you're going to have an obsolete device. It might not be worth it.
Good.
So, it's a weird balance, and the good news is that there are more and more options, and more options means more competition. And hopefully we see something from Bitmain, the big dog in the race, to actually try and compete with these guys on a performance basis, not just on a price basis. That would be a fun thing to watch. So it would benefit, I think, all of the people who are not yet into mining. All the people who are already in mining, though,
might get a little bit of the butt hurts.
Yeah, a little bit, because here's something that is more efficient than their hardware.
Blows their other stuff out of the water.
Yeah, and so that's a risk of mining. So usually, it's not always a bad idea to get on at the leading edge of a new wave of hardware, just so you have the longevity of it. The people who bought the S9s in the beginning have well made their money back, multiple times. The people who, are buying at the end of a cycle, it's harder to predict. Also, it's hard to predict when the next cycle's going to start. So.
If you know, please send an email to
Yeah.
All right, next up. ICE is teaming up with Microsoft to build out Bakkt, BAKKT, a new company that will serve as an ecosystem for digital assets, including Bitcoin. The platform would pretty much allow people to buy and sell digital assets easily. The other big name that's attached to this is Starbucks.
Yeah.
Quick segue from a marketing perspective. An ecosystem geared towards digital assets, or whatever the phrasing was that you used. Man, that's good copy. That says so much without meaning much of anything at all.
That's nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
Yeah. So ICE, the Intercontinental Exchange, is the parent company of the New York Stock Exchange. Yeah. So that's what most people recognize. So when the New York Stock Exchange's parent company says, hey, we're trying to get into crypto, we're trying to get other companies to get into crypto,
people pay attention.
Yeah.
And I mean, Starbucks is a pretty big player, and they've had amazing success with their own app and getting people to transact through that. So this could be just one more step towards greater merchant adoption that would make it easier for merchants to accept all sorts of different currencies and make it easier for its customers, and potentially decrease how much they're paying in credit card transaction fees, because they could cut the middleman out. We'll see.
They don't accept the Rupee yet. I keep trying. Even in the app.
All you can do is try, Jason.
And I do. I try so hard.
And you do.
And in the end, it doesn't really matter.
Dust in the wind.
That's it for my notes. You two want to add anything fun or exciting? We don't have any mail questions. Please send us some questions at mail@cryptocrane.com. You can also post them in the comments. You can send them to Twitter, Facebook, anywhere and everywhere you can contact us. Please send us questions. Otherwise, you're just going to have to hear me keep saying these things over and over again and feel really bad. And eventually I'll start crying. I'm not above crying.
No one wants that.
No.
I don't want that. But
Like
I'll do it.
myself, Jason is an ugly crier. That's not a judgment. That's just an observation.
That's true.
It's not. It's all red and blotchy.
It just gets in my beard, stuck in there for days. Terrible. Just absolutely terrible. All right.
No,
Nothing?
good.
You good?
I'm good.
Great.
Good.
All right, that'll do it from us. Once again, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell if you want to be notified. Hit us up on our Facebook or Twitter. Mail us at mail@cryptocrane.com. And
Thank you
enjoy
for
the
listening and
podcast.
watching.
Yep, enjoy the
Tell your
podcast.
friends, tell your mom, tell your grandma.
Yep, we try to keep it PG. Square joke might have been a little far,
Working on it.
but we'll get there. Where do they have the chip readers?
In the phone. There's a dongle. It goes in the phone.
Oh.
Everybody and their brother, sister, strippers, whatever. They don't move without their phones. It couldn't be far.
It's true.
Yeah, it wasn't an anatomy-related joke. I'd have done one of these if it was.
And that'll do it from us at CryptoCrane. Have a good evening,
Night-night.
or morning, or day at work, or drive home, or drive to.
Whatever you're doing.